Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with podcast lawyer Gordon Firemark. He has practiced media, entertainment, and business law in solo practices since 1992. In podcasting circles, he is known as the Podcast Lawyer and is a producer and host of the Entertainment Law Update podcast. That's been going on since 2009. He's also an author of the podcast blog and New Media Producers Legal Survival Guide. We get into all of this and so much more. Enjoy this interview.
Well, hey, thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So as a podcast lawyer, this has to be a fascinating and booming time for you in this business that podcasting is just soaring.
Yes, it sure is. It's been, one new issue after another coming up in this arena, and I love working with podcasters, creatives, and the folks who support them. So it's exciting.
So let me start off before we get into your work here. I want to know. Yeah. How did COVID treat you? How did you survive it, and how did that process change not only the way that you do business, but the way you view the world?
Oh, great question. COVID, for me, actually, I won't say it was a blessing, but I guess I was fortunate that I was already sort of set up for the work at home, the Zoom instead of meeting in person, those kinds of things. I was already doing audio and video and all those. And my practice up until the beginning of the pandemic had been, sort of equal parts live theater, law, motion picture and television, podcasting and digital media, and then, a little bit of the other stuff. And so when the pandemic hit and everything started shutting down, two of those things sort of quieted down very quickly, and podcasting ramped up and really sort of filled the void, at least enough that I didn't feel the tremendous pinch that a lot of people did. So I consider myself very fortunate and grateful to myself that I had sort of been anticipating some part of the home office lifestyle anyway. I've been working from home office for a decade or so before that.
So you're the podcast lawyer, but there's so many things that go into what you do. So to make this make sense, and boil it down to a part that everybody can understand, I'm going to take you in front of a career day of third graders at an elementary school. One of the kids looks up at you and says, "What do you do for a living, and how are you qualified to do that?" What would you say to them?
Yeah, that's fun. I would say I'm a lawyer, but I'm not like those lawyers you see on TV. I don't spend my days in the courtroom, and I don't spend my days with people who are in trouble. I tend to help people build and create things. And the people that I choose to help in my practice and career are creators themselves, people who make the things that you see on TV, entertainment, and those kinds of things. And as a podcast lawyer, I am within that group of lawyers who help people in the entertainment arena. I focus on a very specific niche subset of those kinds of entertainment that has its own unique things, and that's people who make podcasts and digital videos like on YouTube and stuff like that.
So you're mincing together the right and left brain, with law and entertainment, and I'm curious if we go back in your life to the beginning, how did these seeds get planted in you to kind of cross-pollinate?
That started when I was about 5 years old. I was exposed to live theater when the high school kids, or I should say the 11th and 12th graders at this K through 12 school I attended, were putting on a play, and they invited our kindergarten class to come and see a rehearsal. And I was mesmerized. I was hooked by the artistry and the technology and the lights and the sound and the curtains and everything moving around. And I wanted to be a part of that. And so I stayed with that all the way through my schooling until I was in college. And that's when I got interested in the behind-the-scenes part of film and television. And so I changed my major from theater into film and TV, and only really figured out the law side of it when I was a senior. And I got exposed to some classes. The graduate students were taking these classes in policy and management and government regulation of media and things like that. And I had already finished up all the programs in my major, so I took some of these graduate school classes myself, and I did well. And a professor said I should think about going to law school, and I laughed. I thought that was the funniest thing in the world. I was going to be a movie producer. or director or something. And that didn't work out, but a few years later I started law school and sort of never looked back.
The thing that's interesting about being a podcast lawyer is it obviously blew up over the pandemic. I mean, you know, it almost seems like, and I don't want the word reversion to be a bad thing, but it almost seems like we were heading down this whole video path, and now we've gotten back to just good old-fashioned audio podcasts the way it began when Steve Jobs introduced that revolutionary iPod. And, you know, it's kind of like the recording industry went to vinyl, now they're going back to cassettes. There's always this reversion with sound. And my question to you is like, quantify this right now. How big has this world of podcasting become now in 2022?
It's very hard to quantify. There's a lot of different statistics out there, and it's hard to tell what's accurate and what's what. But the most reliable stuff that I've seen is that there are about a number. I think it was about 4 million podcasts that have been created from the beginning of time until now. Of those, about 500,000 are regularly producing episodes, at least once every few months, 2 or 3 months. And of that, a very small subset are producing episodes more than once a month. My own show is a monthly show, in fact, but so it's actually still a relatively smallish industry, I guess you could say. And the ones that are making lots of money from it, there's a very, very small subset. My guess is that it's, 0.5% of all podcasts are generating enough money to be profitable and generate income for everybody and all that kind of thing. So still a lot of room to grow. The good news and the interesting news is that advertisers have really taken notice of podcasts because podcast listeners tend to be more intensely interested in the subject of the show and loyal to the show. They're not changing the radio dial in between every time an ad comes on. So, so podcast listeners will sit through the ad, and the numbers show that podcast listeners buy stuff they hear advertised on podcasts.
That's interesting, and I can believe that myself. As a content creator myself, and you deal with a lot of content creators, what's the biggest misperception of people that think, I've been doing this for a while, I can't make any money, I can't get advertisers, I can't get this to go. What is it? What's the hump that people have to get over that notion?
Well, I think a lot of people start out with podcasting thinking, this is easy. I just plug a microphone in and talk, and there it is. It's done. And like any business, you have to have a market. You have to understand your customers and clients. You have to be able to get the word out about what you're doing and what you're selling. And it's harder than it looks to the average newbie creator. So I'd say that's misconception one. The other is that you have to make your money from advertising. There are countless ways to make a living, or at least a decent amount of money, from using a podcast, I guess is what I would say. You can sell a course or a product of your own and use it as a free experience that drives people into what they call a sales funnel. And, giving somebody an opportunity to know, like, and trust you leads them to buy your stuff over time. You can use that for other people's stuff as well by becoming an affiliate and selling other people's products by talking about it on the podcast or on video. You've seen a lot of, these unboxing videos on YouTube. And when you click the link in the description to go buy the product, there's a transaction happening, and the creator of the video or the audio gets paid a small commission on that. And lots of those, if you have enough listeners, you can generate a pretty decent living that way. You could actually have a subscription-based podcast. There's lots of ways to make some money. So don't be boxed into the idea that it has to be through advertising revenue.
Let's go back and your lineage here. We're only as good sometimes as the shoulders we stand on. Who would you consider role models or a hero for you?
Well, my father is the first. Anytime people ask, well, who do you look up to? My dad really taught me what it is to be a man and a good citizen and a good human being. He was a physician. He spent his life helping people get better. He had chosen a a field within medicine, neurology, that is still a little bit like witchcraft. People don't quite know everything that's happening inside the brain. And he was a master diagnostician. And so he was really good at solving the problems and really helping people who didn't have anywhere else to go. And so I've modeled that in my being a lawyer, helping people who maybe they're underdogs, or they're, just maybe not quite as loaded with resources as the big companies can be, and yet they still need the help of someone who does the kind of thing I do. And don't get me wrong, I help the big companies too. It's sort of what makes it possible for me to help the little guy from time to time. Other role models, a few teachers that I had growing up, similar things, more about how to be a good human than any specific skill sets or knowledge kinds of things. Anybody can learn the knowledge. It's how you apply it and how you use what you have. They say with great power comes great responsibility, and I think that's true of having a lot of knowledge too. So.
For sure. So let's move this baton a little bit further here. And if you could meet anybody alive on the planet right now, who would you like to meet? Who would you love to talk to?
Boy, that's an interesting one. Anybody alive right now? I think Neil deGrasse Tyson would be a fascinating conversation. I think Barack Obama would be an amazing conversation as well. And, well, I'm going to leave it with those two.
Yeah, that would be great. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I've asked this question. I thought either Bill Clinton or Barack Obama would be wondrous people to talk to for a little bit, for sure. You kind of touched on when you were younger and seeing live entertainment, what that meant for you. But what about any other art that's moved you that you return to, whether it's a show or an album or a book? What is it that's really made you continue to love the arts and to return to it?
I don't think it's any particular piece of art. I think it's the people who make the art is what's really moved me. Being behind the scenes in the theater, I was surrounded by these incredibly creative, incredibly driven people who, they weren't in it for money. They were in it because they had to be doing this. They had to be creating. And that energy is infectious and intoxicating. And I think that's true of novelists, and it's true of musicians, and it's true of, and it's true of anybody who can view their work as art. Carpenters, engineers, architects, everybody who makes stuff. and I just really enjoy those kinds of folks and the energy they bring to things, and helping them to make an impact on the world.
So let's say you have a dream tonight and you run into your younger version of yourself, maybe in your 20s, and you can give that version a piece of advice based on the wisdom that you've gained throughout all of these years. What would you tell your young version?
I think I would start with don't take yourself so seriously. I was very caught up in myself in those days. Don't take yourself so seriously, and keep on keeping on would be the other thing. Just be persistent and stick with things. If you believe in what you're doing, keep doing it, because it will pay off in the long run.
So of all the clients that you've had, has there been a response from one, a fan letter, so to speak, that's really stood out to you that's been very special?
Oh, that's very hard. I don't think I can put my finger on any one. I consider myself fortunate that I hear compliments and appreciative remarks from many of my clients. Not all, but many of them have something nice to say. And I think it's more of an aggregate impact than an individual. Of course, I've had the clients that have stood out as being special in one way or another, either because I felt a particular connection to them, or because they elevated me, made me a stronger, better lawyer, or something like that. But no, it's less about the individual and more about the aggregate.
What is it that drives you when you wake up in the morning and look at your day? What are you motivated to do? What makes you look forward to each day you wake up?
Well, part of it is, survival, keeping a roof over their heads and feeding the family and being a good provider and all of that. I think actually my provider issues are a major driving force for me. Partly because I had such good providers as a child myself. I have a lot to live up to there. But the other thing that I think I provide is a kind of safety, a kind of security for my clients, the people that I help, to understand and know the environment that they're creating in. And as I've said before, that word impact, having an impact by getting their message out. My message is about sharing the information that lets them share what's on their minds, their thoughts. And because we live in a society where talking things out, communicating, being allowed to have our voice and share our opinions and points of view and our knowledge and experience, that's what advances society as a whole. And rattling the tree and getting people to listen is so important. So I want to help people achieve that with their messages.
So the one thing, to piggyback off the COVID thing, are you seeing more people approach you now than they did before the pandemic began?
Well, it's a different set of people. I've targeted my marketing differently. So, I get more of the podcaster, the digital creator kinds of community coming my way. I think, I don't know that I would say it's COVID is responsible. It just happens that the last few years, my marketing, my positioning as the expert in that field and so on has led people have an awareness of who I am and what I'm doing. And I did ramp up my own production of video on YouTube and podcast episodes and things during the pandemic because I was home. I had the time. And so it's raised my profile. But pure sheer numbers, I don't know if it's more people. It's different people with different issues.
So everyone has a perception of you out there in the world, your family, your friends, your clients, but ultimately you live your life. You have a perception of who you are. Who do you think you are?
I think I'm just a guy. I'm a smart guy, and I'm a helper. I'm here to serve. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, I'm just a guy, and I view my main role in the world is serving by providing my kind of help, but also raising my 3 wonderful children to be good people who do the same and who contribute in whatever little ways we all can. And let's move humanity forward. That's my
Amen. So if anyone out there wants to hire you, know more about you and your services, anything related to your world, where can they go?
Well, I'm very fortunate to have a distinctive last name, so you can go to firemark.com or gordonfiremark.com or thepodcastlawyer.com, and you'll find plenty of information about me. I'm on social media and pretty visible there as well. And check out my podcast. It's called Entertainment Law Update.
Beautiful, Gordon. Yeah, you do. You have a wonderful handle, very memorable name. So that's a huge benefit. Gordon, thank you for opening up. Thanks for taking some time out today. I appreciate it. Good luck with everything.
Joe, thank you. It's been wonderful. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, law, music, and literature around the globe. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino on the iTunes channel. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.